Welcome to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Jim Saccomano, and we are your co hosts. Between us, we have 88 years of experience working in media relations in Colorado sports. Myself with the Broncos, Dave with CU, and back in the day, both of us with the Denver Bears with several side experiences.
Now, most of our topics are always going to center around sports history within the state of Colorado, leading into the revealing of 150 significant moments, including ranking the top 50 heading into the state's centennial on August 1, 2026. That's the date of Colorado's 150th birthday after being admitted to the Union as the 38th state in 1876. A little history for y'all.
Hmm.
A select committee of sports veterans, nine of us in all, and we've got about 250 years invested in state of Colorado sports, are in the process of selecting those moments and ranking the top 50. And we're going to start counting them down starting the first week of January at a rate of 5 per week, and then daily for the top 10 come July. Now, recently, we've partnered with the Denver Gazette. They're going to help publicize our project and do a countdown starting on January 8th, I believe is their plan. And they're going to do one per day, 5 per week, and leading up to the revealing of the 10 in July. So thanks to the Denver Gazette for joining on board with our project.
Yeah, that's a first class operation. This is our eighth podcast. We hope you're enjoying them. We're planning to have an occasional guest or two from these moments as they relive them with us on our podcasts, which are archived on the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website, coloradosports.org. Click on the main bar and then podcast.
In the interim, in the interim, we have been revisiting some special moments in Colorado history outside of those lists that we're going to come up with. I have now isolated over 1,900 overall moments, and today we're going to look back at some of the greatest starts and debuts, either by a team or by an individual. This is inspired by the Avalanche's record start of 26 wins, 2 losses, and 7 ties, and the one by the Nuggets, who are now 21-7 after blasting Utah last night. Not to mention the Broncos sitting atop the AFC with a 12-3 record. Jim and I are going to roll through a few great debuts and starts. For example, after sitting out a year doing freshman being ineligible back in the 1960s, former Manual High School phenom Harry Hollins did not disappoint in his debut for the Denver Pioneers. Opening the season in the second annual Mile High Classic at the Auditorium Arena back on December 3rd and 4th, 1965, Holland scored 19 points in a 64-61 semifinal loss to Colorado State, and then scored 29 points in a 90-73 win over Air Force, leading DU in scoring both nights. Hollins is one of 6 new members of the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame set for induction coming up in April.
Now, back in September of 1960, September 9th, 1960, the Denver Broncos opened their first pro football season in the American Football League with a 13-10 win over the Boston Patriots, the inaugural AFL game on a Friday night in Boston. Denver was a 16-point underdog, and how they could compute that, I don't know then, but they scored on 2 long plays. A 59-yard touchdown pass from Frank Trapuka to Al Carmichael, and a 76-yard punt return by Gene Mingo. KHOW Radio, 6:30 a.m., which was, of course, owned by the Hausum family, thus KHOW, broadcast the game with Bill Reed handling the play-by-play and Jerry Groom the commentary. It was not televised. ABC negotiated for the AFL rights, but broadcast only 32 games that season.
You know, Jim, I did some research for another project, and I was able to find some betting lines printed in the newspapers, and mostly in the New York papers, by the way, going back into the early 1950s. So somebody was predicting games at that point.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me, but there's always been gambling, and we could all tell stories. I remember Monday Night Football back in the day. I mean, back in the start of it, Chet Forte was the director. Chet Forte had been a high school star in New York and then a college star, I think, at Columbia. Anyway, let's just say that he would occasionally put down a bet or two on the games after the team's production meetings.
And I'm sure there were no Vegas books, sports books back in the 1950s. So
I'm sure
kind
there
of wonder,
wasn't. Yeah.
kind of wondering who I don't know, maybe reporters made up their own decision on what the sports lines would be, but who knows? Well,
Yeah,
let's go
I don't know.
back to August 23rd, 2001, and this remains one of the most impressive debuts in Major League history. Colorado pitcher Jason Jennings pitched a complete game, a 10-0 shutout of the New York Mets at Shea Stadium. He allowed 5 hits and struck out 8 at the plate. He went 3 for 5 with 2 runs batted in while capping the scoring with a home run hit deep to the right field in the top of the ninth. Now, that's what I call one of the greatest debuts. It's going to be on our list.
I agree. That's just fantastic. On June 8th, 1976, appearing in his first AAA game after being called up from AA Quebec City, Andre Dawson led the Denver Bears to a 6-2 win in Wichita. He homered in his second at bat to put the Bears ahead 2-1, and then singled in a run in the sixth, so extended the lead to 3-1. He would play 74 games in Denver, batting .350 with 20 home runs before being called up by the Montreal Expos later in the season. Awesome Dawson.
Were you the PR director that year?
No, no, that was one year that I was not. That was I don't know. I was in radio at that point and kind of banging around. I went to a lot of games, but was not the PR director. Of course,
They had
the greatest start to a season in Bronco history came in 1998. Denver, the defending Super Bowl champion, opened 13-0 and finished 14-2 in the regular season, then blew out Miami, blew out the Jets for the AFC title, and bested former coach Dan Reeves in Atlanta to claim the title again.
Well, you should have plenty of memories from that season, and I don't know how it would relate to how this season's played
Yeah.
out so far. But why don't you revisit some of your favorite
Well,
stories from that year?
at that time, my daughter was working in New York City at Goldman Sachs. So after we beat out Miami, like 38-3, bad, terrible beating. I go to Mike Shanahan. I said, Mike, my daughter's kind of mad at you. He said, Jennifer, why? I said, well, she lost a bet because of you. And he said, she bet on Miami? I said, no, no, she gave one of her coworkers the Dolphins and 40 points. And when you had Bubby Brister sit down on the ball at the 1 yard line at the end of the game, instead of scoring, she lost the bet. He laughed and we laughed. But boy, there were some of those memories that year. Terrell Davis had 2,008 yards. Ed Werder came in to cover it. And I said, he's not going to get 2,000. He said, sure he will. He's playing Seattle and he just will. I mean, it wasn't that easy. It seems like it when we talk about Terrell or Rashawn. It just seems like the Red Bull gives you wings, and they had wings and all over the place of their feet. Terrell Davis, Denver blitzed opponents in the first halves, outscoring them 300 to 141 on the way to a 501-point season. We finished 8-0 at home for the third straight year. That is not easy to do. That's very hard to do. And I have vivid memories actually of we went a calendar year undefeated because we'd won the last 4 games of '87. And when we lost to the Giants, I remember some of the players quietly into themselves said they were kind of glad we'd lost because the pressure was really getting to them of winning every year. And the next week, we hardly did a game plan. Lost to Miami. Von Hebron did return a touchdown on a kickoff. But oh my God, we we hit the playoffs like a pack of dogs after a gal. I was going to say after a gal at heat, but anyway, that was really tough, and we really won the playoffs. I remember being with Mike Shanahan in the Super Bowl. We win the game, and Shannon Sharp reached into a gym bag and he pulls out a leather jacket, a Letterman's jacket that already had the 2 logos on it. He was very confident we'd go back to back and win. And of course, he was right. Anyway, he puts on the jacket, and that's how he left the locker room. And I remember Mike saying to me when we were gone, I mean, the only guys left in the locker room were Mike and me. And he said, Jim, how did it look from upstairs? did it look dominant enough? And he was, I mean, dominant enough. We've just won back-to-back Super Bowls, and he wanted to know if it looked dominant enough. But he was incredible, and it was a great, great moment, Dave.
Do you remember how many yards Terrell needed in the last game to hit 2,000?
Well, he needed about 150, and I think he had like 170 some. He had 2008 for the year, but it wasn't like he went into the last game needing 74 yards or something easy. But I remember Ed Werder said to me, well, he did it the first time, he'll do it again against Seattle. And I thought, no, it's not that easy, Ed, but it was for Terrell.
You know what I remember about that Miami playoff game? 38-3, you did nail the score. You remember the score, right? That morning is when Rick Neuheisel got the call or got offered the job at Washington. And he had the assistants come over to my house to figure out what they wanted to do. Rick had called Dick Tharp to tell him that he had the offer and wanted to see if Dick would keep him here. And Dick basically wished him good luck. So all the assistants came over to my house so they could figure out who's going to go and who's going to stay. When I got down to Mile High, and I don't know if you remember this, but at that point, Tharp had called his buddy John Meadows, who had called Dan Creedon. Dan Creedon called his people down in the press box. I walk in and I was surrounded with the media like I was the star of a game or something. Like I didn't know at that time if Rick had a counter offer or not, so I kind of had to play dumb.
I remember when the assistant coaches were all, to use a term, hiding out at your place, until they saw what was going to happen.
And I was kind of a little bit mad at Rick because when I got home, he forgot to lock the front door to my house. Not
Nice,
that I have a lot
really
of things
nice.
to
Yeah.
steal. At any rate, well, at this time, we'd like to welcome our guest for today, Jeff Soupy Campbell, a recent inductee into our CU Athletic Hall of Fame. He led her for the Buffaloes from 1986 to 1989. He is best remembered for tearing the hearts out of Nebraska fans and wins over the Huskers in 1986 and 1989. Soup, welcome to our podcast. Your hosts are two of your PR directors, myself, of course, and Jim Saccomano, when you spent your final year in the NFL with the Broncos.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes,
how
love
you
both of
doing?
you guys. I'm good, Jimmy. How are you?
Doing great, doing great.
It
Jeff,
is
we've
good
been
to be on here.
revisiting.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, sure. Sorry I missed you at the Hall of Fame induction. I was counted down for the count that night.
No worries. It was an incredibly special night with just a family that I wouldn't have traded for anything in the whole world. That Buffalo family is real special to me.
Well, before you jumped on, we've been revisiting a few great starts and debuts in state sports history. Now, in your case, talking about great debuts, yours really started the first week at football camp back in August of 1986. You were a walk-on freshman from Battle Mountain High School in Vail. You were 5'8", 155 pounds soaking wet, and you really made more of your bones as a hockey player because I think you were ranked as one of the top 25 in the nation coming out of high school. So
Yeah,
why
one of
don't
the
you
top 75.
go down memory lane and tell us the experience that first week and what happened at the end of the week?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is I went to a national junior select camp the summer before I went to CU, and it was a really good experience for me because I learned what elite talent truly looked like, and even though it was hockey, it definitely let me see what that next level looked like. So I went into the camp with Mac with no, I had nothing to lose. I mean, they had given me a chance. There was not a scholarship that was offered, and I thought, well, this is my opportunity, and this is not going to come along again. And I went in with an attitude that I was just going to go in and give it my best shot and see how it all worked out. So the first day I was there with Coach Logan, who was the running backs coach, as you remember, Platts. I'm going to move because my dog's screaming. Um, and then I moved to quarterback the next day with Gary, and then the next day I moved over with Barney to DB, and then I settled in with Oliver Lucas at wide receiver and had a really good day. And but at all that time um, I was catching punts and doing the special team stuff, which kind of got me started. But after about that fifth day, Coach Mack pulled me into his office and just said, and you remember this, Platts, because you were part of it, but he just said, we're going to put you on scholarship, and everything worked out great from there. And I think, so much of that whole process was just ending up in the right place with the right people at the right time.
And the
And
right
there you have it.
opportunity and the right preparation, which you had.
Yeah, lots and lots of preparation, that's for sure. I mean, I think the mental preparation for me and overcoming a lot of the things that people would say about me about, you're never going to make it, you're just too small. And I had I can't remember what reporter it was, but we had we were getting, it was Gray. I think it was the guy, Jim Gray, had come in. We were getting ready to play Oklahoma State, and he literally told me I did not belong on the same field as Hartley Dykes. I mean, but that was just kind of par for the course for me. I was so used to it, and I was so resilient to the fact that I wasn't going to let somebody else dictate how good or bad I was going to do. That was left up to me. So I just kind of, was lived inside myself there for a little bit, just kind of dealing with that stuff. But at the same time, I had this incredible group of guys that were in that freshman class that year, that were just supportive. And I mean, they didn't care if you were a walk on. They wanted to win, and I wanted to win. So it all worked out good.
And you can't fool players. Players know other players when they see them.
That is exactly right. And there is so much, when you go in, earning your respect and earning your right to and your place in programs like that is a big factor. I mean, they've got to know that when it comes down to it, you're going to make a play. And it's such an unbelievable feeling when you gain that respect, and then you have the opportunities to do some things in big games that will be, beneficial to the team, beneficial to the program, beneficial to everything that goes along with winning. And we went from being an okay team our freshman year, obviously, to go into a national championship my senior year. And even though we lost that journey, not until I got out after about 5 years, did I really appreciate and get to look back at that journey and go, wow, what an unbelievable experience and ride that whole thing was.
And there you have it. One of the greatest debuts took place in practice before we were even in pads.
Yeah, I was an intimidating person. Remember, Platts? I was so intimidating, like I couldn't even intimidate the managers at that point. But being 147 pounds, like I said, I had nothing to lose. I was getting after it, and I gave everything I had. And it's just like you said, Jimmy, it's those years and years and years of blood, sweat, and tears, and doing the things behind the scenes that nobody sees, and trying to just let all that stuff come to a head. So you've got an opportunity to go out and do great things.
When ball players come into the locker room, the first thing they do, and you'll get it here, they get naked. You will. The press clippings do not matter. The bonus
No,
does not matter. They put
right.
on the same uniform, they go on the field. The
Yep.
fastest guys are the fastest guys. And I don't care what the times were ahead of time. The
Right.
the guys make plays, they don't make plays, and coaches can tell. And boy, you were a player, Jeff. You were a player.
Well, I appreciate it. So much of opportunity is, taking it when it gives itself to you. And you're right. Each of us go in to that locker room. We all put on that same uniform. That's the other locker room does the same. And it's your opportunity to go out and do great things and make plays. And I remember Mike. Even though I didn't get to go, I went through training camp with Mike, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. But the one thing that he focused on is you have got to be able to make plays. And I mean, look what he did. I mean, I was listening to you guys talk about him a little bit earlier in the program, and Mike is that guy that's so competitive that, like you said, Jimmy, it's like, were we dominant? I mean, that's Mike, and that's Mac. And the great coaches, the ones that expect so much more than you think you're even capable of doing, are the ones that go win championships. That's just who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
can
a little
tell
unfair
stories
for
about Mike.
Jim.
Sorry.
It's a little unfair for Jim Gray to compare you to Hartley Dykes, since I think he was what, 6'5".
Like 240.
Yeah.
I
So
wasn't even two of me that big.
You
Whatever
know,
happened to him, I wonder.
I don't know. I think he played in the league a couple years.
Well,
Um,
you played six.
yeah, yeah, yep, yep. It was good. I was very fortunate, very lucky, blessed beyond belief, and at the same time, I loved every second of every person that I had the chance to connect with in that league. And as hard as it was just as gratifying on the other side of that.
before we get to our great start in 1989, 1986, we lost our first four games, and it was a little disappointing because we were coming off 7-5, first winning year since '78, and CSU drummed us in that first game. We had to score with like 30 seconds left to avoid being shut out, and then we lost our next three games, I believe, by 10 points. Then we turned it around. Remember what was the main reason we were able to do that? Because we were really bumming at sitting there at 0-4, and we did have the open week after the loss to Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just so that was you're talking about 86, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that team that we had with, the leadership of Remington and Solomon Wilcots and, Darren Schubeck, that whole group, I think that they had come to, the resolution that we were either going to turn this thing around right now or we're going to lose this entire season. And I think the one thing that brought that team together in 86 was we just started caring about one another. We were beyond the whole individual thing. We started really, um, you know, um, really understanding each other, playing closer together, practicing harder. So we took it to another level. And I was actually telling Remington when we were at the Hall of Fame, I said, it was really interesting to have that group of leaders that were on your team because you guys kind of set the foundation for who we were going to be, not necessarily who we were at that time. But I think that there's something to be said about leaders that set the bar for who you're going to be. And it was a really good conversation. So that's kind of what I would say happened is they started to set the bar for who we needed to be, and we needed to work towards that.
We win at Missouri, beat Iowa State at home. Number three, Nebraska comes to town. And we classified that game as the turning point in Mac's tenure. What do
Mm-hmm.
you remember about that game, my friend?
I remember waking up in the morning going, I've never seen so much red in my life anywhere. Um, but I remember going out and Hatcher and I were sitting in the back of the bus on the way over from the College Inn, and it was just a different feeling on that bus, probably different than anything that we had certainly had during that year. And we we came out and we gave them a couple of pretty good shots right away. And I think that we started to gain confidence through that game. And then when Mac decided to call 38 reverse at 9, I remember I remember feeling butterflies like I'd never ever felt before in my entire life. I was never nervous about anything. I would get anxious, but those butterflies were going like crazy. And I remember taking that little left step and going around and watching Hatcher get swallowed up by Noonan. And he got that ball off, and I turned that corner and saw just nothing but CU guys in green. And I thought to myself, man, if you screw this up, this is really not going to be good. Um, but I had a really nice kind of guide of guys on from our side down there. I had to make one move on Washington to get in the end zone, and I remember that as just one of the best feelings I've ever had in my life. And it wasn't even necessarily a feeling for me. It was a feeling for that entire group because Nebraska week. I remember they taped the helmets and put red ends on them, and made this huge deal of Nebraska. And it just felt so good after losing or learning about how many years that they had lost that team to get some points on the board and put us in a position to go win.
Of course, he scored from 39 yards out in that reverse, and then we opened the fourth quarter with a big surprise, the famous halfback pass from O.C. Oliver to Lance Carl. And at that point, Nebraska was never within one score of us to tie the game.
Yep, that was unbelievable. That was an unbelievable feeling.
Well, that's the first time you wrecked Nebraska. So let's now fast forward to our greatest start in our history, 1989, 11-0.
Yep.
And of course, that year was marked by the death of Stalin and the team rallying around Sal and dedicating the season to him, and that's been pretty well documented. But you can still talk about it a bit here and what that meant to you, and the famous play where you caught the long pass at Illinois and pointed to the press box itself.
Yeah, I that was a special season. We had been through a lot. There was a lot of emotions that were certainly on that team, and none of us, I don't think, had ever experienced anything like that. So all we could do was rely on each other. And I think that that was the thing that made that team so good. I mean, we knew about each other. We knew families. We knew brothers and sisters and moms and dads, and none of that had ever happened before. And we just, we came together and gelled. And that season, I just remember coming out against Illinois and just seeing Sal up there in the stands and having watched him fight for his life. I mean, for months. And I caught that long pass, and the first thing that came to my mind was I got to get out to the middle of this field and acknowledge the fact that he was right there with us. And I loved it. I loved being able to see him because 2 days later he passed. And that was a pretty special moment, certainly for all of us on that team. But for me and Gibby and Tim James and Oak and all the ones that were right there with him the whole time, that was a real special thing for me. But as we started to gain momentum through that season, we weren't talking about beating people. We were talking about how badly we were going to beat people. I mean, we had that confidence level. And, for all intents and purposes, that following year, I'm going to skip ahead just a minute, but that following year, I think, and Platt, you'll know better than me, but I think 10 of the 11 guys on defense got drafted, something like that. So practice during the week was way harder than the game because we literally had the best team in the country that you're practicing against every day. And when you went into that game, you were so unbelievably prepared. So when we had Nebraska right there at the end of the year, I had so much confidence in our special teams at that point that I didn't look down. Once the ball came off the foot of the punter, I typically would just kind of track it and then I'd look down to see where everybody was, kind of get my timing on what I needed to do. And I didn't do that. I just watched the ball, had the trust in those guys. And as soon as I caught it, I had to make a little move on Carpenter and get around the right side on both of those, and huge blocks by Julian Hayward and Paul Rose and those guys to get me kind of out into the open. And I mean, it was just fantastic twice. I mean, that happened twice. I had so much confidence in those guys that, I could just sit back there and do my job for them and go make some big plays.
Of course, we had a bye week after the Illinois game, and we were talking about at the time. It's like Sal was so conscious of the team, he decided to pass away when we didn't have a game.
Yep.
And of course, we rallied at Washington the next week, and even though that final score was 45-28, that was a classic. This score does not reflect how bad that beating was because they scored. I think they scored three touchdowns in the fourth quarter. It was 38-7, I believe. At one point, it wound up being 45-28. But his famous photo from that game, you remember that what that was?
Oh yeah, yeah, the one where everybody took a knee.
Yep.
That, and it's so much. I mean, everybody probably knows now, but that was completely unrehearsed, as you know, Dave. I mean, none of us had ever talked about that. We all got that letter in our locker that Mac that everybody had put up there so we could read that prior to that game. And I remember that Washington had come out with purple over gold like they normally do in their normal home games, and then when they came out to play, they were in all purple. And I was like, are you really going to poke that bear? I mean, come on. Whose executive decision was that one? So, I remember them standing on that sideline being in all purple, and we took a knee. And when that moment of silence was over, I just remember dudes like, this is going to be a long day for them. And, we put it on them pretty good. And, I think in all honesty, that game was crucial to that season because we were either going to fold it up and kind of and struggle through that season because what had happened to Sal and kind of what we'd all been through, or we were going to group it up and we were going to go do what we needed to do. And that is exactly what we did. We had guys making plays. I mean, big plays that entire season. I mean, wasn't one person or two people. It was collectively guys making big plays.
Of course, the letter you're referring to is one that Sal dictated to, I forget which sister, either Ruta or Opal.
Yeah, to
And
Rita.
CBS during the Nebraska game actually ran it at the end of the broadcast with the cameras pointing to the sky, which was kind of a cool yet emotional moment when you watch the replay of that game.
Yeah.
At what point in the season though did you think the team was for real? Was it that Washington game, or was it first of all you had to earn the trust of or get the trust of Darian Hagan, a quarterback? And I
Yeah.
think when he had the 75-yard run on the second play against Texas, that issue is probably pretty much settled. But at what point did we start thinking, hey, we can make a run at the national title?
I believe it was that game. I think that we figured out we had something pretty special, not only in Darian, but Darian. I mean, holy cow! You talk about a guy that was given the keys to a Ferrari, but at the same time, you still got to know how to work the Ferrari and drive the thing. And he did a just an absolute masterful job of coming in a really high pressure situation with a team that really did have a chance to get out there and do some things that season. And when he took off on that little 75-yard run against Texas, I think we all knew this kid's for real. And let's rally behind him. Let's protect him. That offensive line did an unbelievable job that year. But at the same time, Jimmy, you talked about the work that you put in. Darian needed to learn, defenses. He needed to learn what all that was, and he did. And he invested a lot in Sal. He invested a lot in Coach Barnett. He went out and did the things necessary to become arguably one of the best college quarterbacks, I think, that's ever played the game when you look at that particular offense. I mean, him and Holloway, I think he was better than Jamel. I think he ran it better than Jamel. But the two of them were pretty incredible. Tony, or the other, what was the quarterback's name from Nebraska that was also really good at that?
Uh,
I can't remember. I forget a lot
Tony?
about Nebraska.
There you go. Actually, people don't remember this, but the conference probably helped us win that Nebraska game only because we had Nebraska three times at home during your career. At one point, they decided to get Nebraska and Oklahoma off everybody's home schedules the same year. So what happened was we wound up going to Oklahoma 2 years in a row,
Yep.
and Nebraska wound up coming here in '87 and then again in '89. So once
Yep.
again, you saw the sea of red, although a little bit less than probably in '86. But so, of course, that was during a run where Nebraska scored on the first play against us something like three times in 6 years. So they go up 7-0 right away. What was the feeling then? And of course, talk about the play that tied the game.
Yeah, no big. It was really no big deal. When it was Carpenter on that little, it was either a pass or a deep handoff, whatever. But he runs right up the middle and goes in the end zone. And I mean, it was like, all right, no big deal. We got this, not a problem. We were so confident and we were so ready and prepared for that game that it was just it was a feeling that I certainly had never had in sports at all, where it wasn't even a big deal. And then the plays that were made, the punt returns, the big play to Lance, the knockdown by David McClellan at the end there, just to make sure that we were going to be okay, even though Godowski I think was over the line of scrimmage.
He was.
David still made a really good play on that ball to assure that we were going to go. And the feeling, it's an indescribable feeling. I mean, knowing that you've gone where we all came from, the improvement that we made over the 4 years that certainly I was there, and to be able to go down to the Orange Bowl and play for the national title was just incredible.
Your first punt return went for 47 yards. That set up the second touchdown that put us in the lead for good at 14-7. And then your second one covered 55 yards. That put us up 24-14, which wound up being the game-winning points.
Yeah, pretty special. But it was, I will take credit for running the ball, but without a whole bunch of great blocks and a ton of effort for those guys up front, that wouldn't have happened. And it was just so fun to be part of that family. And, to be a part of that family even now is one of the more special things I have in my life for sure.
So I want to tell the people listening, your overall in your senior career, between rushes, receptions, and punt returns, you had 139 touches for 2,186 yards. That's 15.7 yards per play. with 7 touchdowns. Your best touch or your longest touchdown was that 90-yard bomb you caught at Kansas State. But the most impressive of a lot of those stats of your 28 career catches for 802 yards, you averaged 28.6 yards per catch. It's like nobody was ever near you.
Yeah, I like the deep ball, Dave.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, with the Broncos, you started one game, I think, and you had a touchdown pass 22 yards from Elway. Any We beat Atlanta that day. Any special memories from that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play a lot of a receiver here in Denver. I played a lot of more special teams, as you know. I'm in there like crazy on in playing that offense, and when I got my chance, I took advantage of that. But to be able to go and play at home, come play at home from Detroit, I had a chance to go to the Falcons. Maybe that would have been a better fit for me just because the offense was a better fit, but I just wanted to come home and play here in Denver and to be able to catch a touchdown pass from Elway certainly was one of the highlights of my career. We had spent a lot of time together that year, and just have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for John. I mean, his career speaks for itself, but to be able to do that with a Hall of Fame quarterback was pretty special.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Soup, thank you for spending some time with us today.
Of
Hope you have a
course.
good holiday season.
Well, love both of you guys. Thank you for everything you did for me in my career, David. All the way from day one at Buffs at University of Colorado, and then Jimmy in Denver. You were so unbelievably gracious and so thankful for both of you guys. So Merry Christmas.
One of the last times we talked, you had just taken your son to the airport where he was going to Baylor University to be a doctor. What happened?
Yeah. Well, so he went, did really well his first year there. He was like a 3.93, I think, pre-med, and decided that Baylor was not for him. So he finished here at the University of Colorado.
Great.
And he is currently a flight instructor in Denton, Texas, getting his hours so he can go fly airplanes.
Great. That's good to hear, Soup.
Yeah. Yes. So proud of both my little monsters.
You betcha.
So,
that's quite a career switch.
Yeah. Well, Merry Christmas, you guys. Please don't be strangers. I'd love to see you at some point.
You got it. Thanks, Soup.
Take care.
Now, next week, we're going to bid farewell to 2025 by looking back at some of the greatest farewell performances in Colorado sports history. We hope you're enjoying our podcast. Keep spreading the word. Got to thank our sponsors, Pasta J's of Boulder, located on the corner of 10th and Pearl, Bill Walton's favorite joint when he was here for games, and Colorado Collegiate Chronicle, an in-depth weekly look at college sports around the state, published weekly by another state sports PR veteran, the one and only Tim Blowfish Simmons.
As always, we look forward to you tuning in weekly to enjoy our reminiscing with our Colorado Sports Hall of Fame guests, as well as our trips back into the state's sports history. A reminder that the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame class for 2026 will be inducted this coming April 16th at the Hilton City Center in downtown Denver.